Now, as I mentioned, digging up what's buried in the depths of your subconscious and accepting it, which means being willing to be with it and experience it fully, is extremely terrifying and isn't something that is necessarily pleasant, okay? Because what this means is that you are going to have to face your biggest fears, okay? There's nothing scarier than facing all this shit down here, okay? Than fucking going head first into Pandora's box, facing all of those unacceptable things, all of those things you've just been keeping down there for years, for your entire life pretty much, and that have been on repeat this entire time, gaining momentum, becoming stronger and stronger, having more and more charge behind them. What you have to do here is go head first and just let them take over. Just plunge into the depths of your subconscious. And you are going to experience a lot of resistance to this. Okay, there are often many layers of resistance you need to let go of first before you can even just see what is in there. But remember this, the things we're the most resistant to are the things we really need. Okay, but yeah, I mean, of course you are going to experience a lot of resistance to this. Nobody wants to remember trauma. Nobody wants to face all of these unacceptable aspects of themselves. There's a reason you banished all of this in your subconscious, and you've been investing a lot in terms of just keeping it all stuffed down there, okay? And bringing this up, facing it, will not only bring up that same fear of rejection, abandonment, and death that you first experienced when you stuffed it down. Say you're younger, again, in order to survive, you're like, oh my God, I must, disown me laughing. That's how crazy it gets. Me laughing, I must fucking disown that. I cannot ever laugh in order to survive here. So you just facing this aspect of yourself and letting go of that resistance to laughing will bring up the same trauma that you had when you stuffed it down in the first place. Like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. It literally feels like death. And not just that, but those sensations will be amplified because this has been down here for so fucking long. There's so much dread. You've been running away from it for so long. You've amplified it in your mind. Compare it to, say there's like a little task you need to do. Like, let's just say some financial stuff. You need to check your bank account and just check over some transactions, something simple like that. Objectively, that task is not that bad. But let's just say you put it off for a little while, and you put it off a little longer, and a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, and now it's like a month. You've just been putting that off. Although the task is simple, there's a lot of dread, and you probably will have a lot more resistance to doing that task than if you just did it in the first place. Okay? Again, there's that momentum, that charge behind it. Now imagine that, but on something where it's like life or death, like trauma, like survival, like amplified over the course of pretty much your entire life, okay? That's what's going to happen. That is why you experience resistance. It feels like you're literally going to die. And it also means acknowledging that you've been fucking up by keeping it down there. All of that energy, just stuffing it down. You're so invested into just stuffing it down. It means that you got to acknowledge that, hey, that was not the way. Your entire life, the way you've been going about things, you've been fucking up, which is another hit to the ego. But as we talked about before, there is no other way. The way out is through, and it will feel, as we mentioned before, like death, because in a way, what are you doing? Your ego here, you're killing it. You are killing the ego. That limited self, you've convinced yourself, only this is me, is going to die. But this is the process. So you'll probably have to let go of a lot of resistance first in terms of digging up what's in your subconscious. And when the resistance kicks in, what you have to do is simply let go of those sensations. Okay, don't resist the resistance, if you will. And with time and repetition, and this is key, don't expect to just, skip all these steps, just jump into your subconscious and whoa, let it all out. Of course not. Time and repetition. Time and repetition. The more you'll kind of blast through these barriers of resistance, the more you'll fall through the resistance, and the more your subconscious will offer up little bits and pieces of what's been down there. Okay, it probably won't just come out at once. It'll just be a little bit. You know, after a while, you let go of enough resistance, your subconscious is like, okay, fine, here's a bit. You know, how is that okay? Do you survive? Because again, there's so much fear, and you're like, I survived with a little bit, maybe a little bit more. A little bit more, and with time and repetition, you may have to go back, like say you're going back to a certain traumatic experience, you'll have to go back to the experience over and over and over again, and every time your subconscious will offer up a little bit more, and eventually there'll be this tipping point where it offered up enough that everything will just go rushing out, okay? This is what I experienced going through that media scandal right after. I mean, there were a lot of things that I just stuffed down there going through it in order, you know, it felt like life or death, like, oh my God, I'm gonna die, stuff it down. And going back and letting go of all those things, I had to go through all the resistance. And, you know, my subconscious would offer up a little bit, like a little bit of, say, anger, a little bit of hurt, but I didn't want it all to come up because I'm like, whoa, I kept it down here. I don't want to fucking re-experience this horrible thing. I don't want to experience what I went through here. It's like, keep it down. Like, I did not want it to come up. And eventually, once a few little bits of hurt, pain, sadness, anger, guilt came up, there was a tipping point where it's like, well, he can take it. It's safe. And everything just came rushing out. All the stuff from that traumatic experience just rushed out and just took over. And this can be extremely overwhelming. If this happens, and this is key, don't be surprised and don't freak out. Okay, if you experience extreme sensations like crying, shaking, do not resist them. Do not suppress those and stuff that down. This isn't bad. Okay, this is your body clearing itself and letting go. Okay, what you have to do is stay with those extreme sensations, breathe through them, and simply let them run their course. Okay, this is usually when people give up, resistance kicks back in. It's like, here's a little bit more, a little bit more. Okay, fuck it. Everything comes out and you're like, oh my God, stuff all that down. And again, you add more and more layers of resistance because you think that it's getting worse. Okay, no, this is good. Me, like that's what happened to me. I'm like, little bit. And then I was just sitting there and it just took over. And again, it's like literal tears, crying, everything, like body shaking a bit. Everything just rushed out. And that was the process. Okay, that is good. Things must get worse before they get better. Don't view it as necessarily worse. Because although, let's just say there was that hurt and everything was rushing in, I was shaking, after that, I did experience more relief. And guess what? It's not all gone in like one day. Then guess what? You might feel a little bit more fragile for like a week, 2 weeks. You know, it might take 2-3 weeks of you being in this state, but after that, it's gone. Okay? And that relief and that feeling of maybe a little bit more hurt is better than just the resistance of keeping it down and just being numb. Okay? Just look for relief. If you're someone who doesn't feel and then you experience anger, you may think anger is bad, but no, anger is one step up. Apathy, anger. Anger is higher than apathy. So don't have these weird labels of anger is bad, only happy is good. Just look for relief. Be honest with yourself by being aware of the different sensations, okay? And don't be afraid here too. One of the big fears people have is that if they experience, for example, a certain traumatic experience, if they let all that up, they're going to be traumatized again. But that's not the case, okay? What you realize is that the reason that this is down here, the reason you're hanging on to it is because you're resisting it, because you didn't allow yourself to experience it when it first happened. So you're not going to be re-traumatized here. You're basically experiencing what you didn't allow yourself to experience then. When you went through that certain traumatic experience, you immediately stuffed it down here. It didn't register consciously. You didn't embrace it and experience it and stayed with it fully. You resisted it. So you're not going to be re-traumatized. You're actually going to experience it and then, of course, let go of it. And let go here of trying to feel good, okay, kind of building on this. The goal here is not to feel good. The goal is to feel whatever is going on within us. Let go of these labels, good and bad, okay? Let go of your resistance to pain and discomfort. Hanging on to pain and discomfort is what keeps all of that there. one of my favorite sayings that I've been saying for years now is you have to develop a perverted pleasure in the pain. Learn to embrace pain, learn to embrace discomfort. Not in a carrot and stick type of way, but in accepting whatever is going on. Okay, and this is good pain, as we discussed in one of the previous videos. This pain of all this coming up is you dissolving a little bit more and a little bit more of the ego. It's all that shit melting away. There's always a link between transformation and quote unquote suffering. Okay, not suffering that we're used to, but this kind of suffering, killing the ego. And remember that a lot of what you fear, that's stuffed down here, you stuffed that down when you were a child, okay, when you were young, during your upbringing, and you still had a very limited perspective on things. So what this means is that although, a lot of these things are traumatic, a lot of these things, it's not going to be very pleasant, some of these things, you will realize that, hey, it was not as bad as I thought. Okay, for example, if you're younger and you experience something that you just don't understand, an emotion you don't understand, something new, and you don't have enough context to get it, you can't comprehend the nuances, and you just panic. You're like, what is this? You stuff it down. When you allow yourself to experience it now, you'll just quickly realize, like, whoa, it was not as bad as I thought. What was that? Okay, your perspective at the time is what caused you to suppress it. When you bring it into the light of consciousness, if you will, into awareness, oh, it was not as bad as I thought it was. Okay, placed in a different context, seen from a different perspective, the significance and meaning will change drastically. Okay, so with a lot of these things, just face the resistance, face fear's bluff, if you will. It's not always that bad. And a last common excuse here that I hear all the time when I talk about this is, well, what about the law of attraction? Okay, which basically states whatever you think, whatever you focus on, you're going to manifest more of that. So if you focus on all this shit, you're just going to manifest more and more of it. Okay, and that is wrong. What you have to understand is that all this shit, guess what? It's already there. You are already thinking all of this quote unquote shit. It's been on repeat your entire life. It's still on repeat right now. You're thinking it right now. It's active, whether you're aware of it or not. So you are thinking it, but what we're doing is, instead of being unaware and just letting it be on repeat, and guess what? Manifest more of that. It's doing that right now. Okay, these subconscious things, unacceptable things, are right now, currently, subject to the law of attraction. You're attracting those things, no matter how how much you try to think positively, like, let me escape this, positive focus, let me think of all these happy thoughts. Happy thoughts. Why is it that, guess what? Did those happy thoughts work? No. Okay, it's just more escapism. What you're doing here is you're bringing awareness to it. And there's a difference between thinking it and bringing awareness to it. Just by bringing awareness to it, you pull out some of the momentum. Okay, because that's on repeat. You bring awareness, you take out a bit of the charge, and then you let go of it. Okay, so don't use that as an excuse either. You gotta face this. You gotta, again, things gotta get worse before they get better. It's not a pleasant process, but it's a necessary one. And just follow relief. You have to experience all this. The suffering is by you refusing to experience it. Similar to your emotions. Oh, I don't want to feel. I don't want to feel. Feel. They'll run their course. Feel, and all of this will stop being labeled as bad. It'll finally become a part of you. It will stop running you. You will finally feel whole, of that core confidence. You will feel abundance, and you'll finally be in control. Okay, so open the box, dive, just head first, face fear's bluff, go for it.